All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on building an intelligent and secure network for your smart factory. So creating and delivering consistent designs across your OT networks is a vital step to implementing manageable, robust and secure networks that will help you achieve digital resilience and pave the way for Industry 4.0 practices. Practices that leverage AI and machine learning, unlocking business benefits that were previously just a dream. I'm Adam Stiles, a senior consultant from 4Fusion today, and I'm joined today by Greg Leonard from Cisco. Greg, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure thing, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Leonard. I'm an account executive for the industrial networking architecture at Cisco. I'm a specialist within Cisco who's focused on OT customers.
Thanks, Greg. So our agenda for today's webinar walks us through the challenges of an OT network and how we modernize the environment, gain visibility, segment, and provide secure remote access into the environment. For any questions you might have, please use the Q&A section within the webinar. So this will be at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you click on the three dots, you'll see an option for Q&A and you can put your questions in there. So we'll do our very best to answer all of the questions during the webinar, but if we do run out of time, then we'll reach out to you to provide an answer. So first, a few words about 4Fusion. So I'm a senior consultant from 4Fusion. We're a Cisco Gold partner specializing in the delivery of Tier 1 IT services through market-leading technologies and highly skilled accredited professionals. So we have a proven ADIO, assess, design, integrate and operate methodology, and this ensures that we minimize the operational risk at all stages of our engagement. And in addition to our professional services that we offer, we also provide comprehensive managed services. We have this offering that spans multiple siloed or fully integrated technology pillars, leveraging our experts and serving as an extension to your team 24/7, 365 days a year. Our security cleared engineers and consultants excel in designing, implementing and managing mission critical IT infrastructure for large public and private sector companies. We have expertise in IoT, IT managed services, networking, data center, security and cloud solutions, all underpinned by robust security measures on our side. And with that, I'll hand over to you, Greg.
And Greg, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Adam. Thank you for also handing the little ball over to me. So let's now set the scene and talk about challenges and trends that we see in the industrial networks. So it's likely no secret that most industrial networks have poor network hygiene and inadequate security controls. Usually, OT networks have been developed and maintained as separate entities to the IT network. And the OT networks will have certain characteristics about them that make them a lot different than IT networks. So for example, what you'll see in OT networks are perhaps older equipment and devices, pardon me, that are active on the network. Those devices will have older versions of firmware and operating systems. They'll use different topologies to what IT is used to. So they'll use ring topologies, for example, rather than star topologies. And in an OT network, you'll also have a variety of industrial protocols running over there, which will be unfamiliar to the IT teams. And typically in manufacturing or OT networks, what you see in them is that they tend to be flat, so-called layer 2 networks. And they're not segmented, or they'll just be slightly segmented, maybe just have a couple of VLANs on there. But what we typically find is that it's one very large network in a single VLAN. So manufacturing networks have grown over the years as production lines have been set up with different vendor equipment. And so they just kind of organically grow and change as the needs of as the production lines change over time. So typically, there are separate teams that are specialized in the OT or IT teams and that will support the networks, but they typically in the past didn't work together. The other unique characteristic in OT networks is that they're always on, they're always up. Uptime is hugely important in a manufacturing environment because the manufacturing process needs the OT network so that that process can run. And having that process run is extremely important for the business because the output of the manufacturing process is what generates revenue for the business. So yeah, it's in a sense for the business, the maintenance process, the manufacturing process, excuse me, is mission critical. So when you're working with a network that is mission critical, it's always on. You can't always just off the cuff, do work on that network. You have to plan that network. So plan the changes into the network. So maintenance windows are very carefully planned, and let's be honest, they're probably infrequent because they need to keep that network running so that they can produce that output and generate that revenue. So maybe a couple times a year, they'll take the manufacturing process down, and the teams will then do updates of firmware and operating systems. And so the long and short of it is, you probably won't see updates to firmware and operating systems happening on an OT network as regularly as you would see on an IT network. So then when you look at the large flat networks that are mostly unsegmented with older devices and equipment that on the network and that aren't necessarily patched or updated regularly, this means that OT networks can be susceptible to cyber attacks, and so they aren't necessarily digitally resilient. So they are at risk and to quickly fall victim to a cyber attack that can cause unplanned outages in production, and that impacts obviously the bottom line of the business. So what we are seeing in industries today is that they are accelerating their digitization, and to help with this, they may need to deploy more IT technologies. So operation teams are always looking for new ways to grow productivity and improve efficiencies, and they're driving new and higher impact outcomes. And with that, they're purchasing different types of equipment, new equipment, and many of these new equipments, they are connecting to systems and applications that can sit in the IT domain, for example, like in an IT data center, or sometimes even to the cloud. And this deeper integration between IT, cloud, and operational networks is exposing the industrial networks and operations to more cyber threats. So the threat landscape is, I guess you could say, increasing. So these industrial assets are often managed by third parties. So for example, suppliers or contractors, and often remote experts are needed to remotely access the industrial assets in the OT network in order to maintain, configure, or troubleshoot them should a problem arise. Now, a lot of manufacturers these days are, putting these remote experts under contract, and they'll have SLAs set up. So if an issue does come up, then it's super important that the individuals have remote access to the OT environment so that they can fulfill their SLAs. That sometimes comes with an unexpected result, which means that you'll get LTE gateways sometimes that are installed in the OT domain, effectively opening up a back door, or what's also known as a shadow IT practice, that can open up the industrial sites to potential other risks that they weren't expecting because you got a back door into the network. So all over the world, we've got governments that are developing cybersecurity regulations to force industrial organizations to protect their operations and safeguard their critical infrastructures. So IT and security teams are now being asked by the business leaders in their organizations to help the operations team to manage and secure their industrial networks and to make them more digitally resilient. And in that activity, where the IT teams and security teams are getting more involved in kind of investigating the OT networks, they are encountering interesting things as they try to understand the as-is and the current OT network designs in factories that they may be asked to look after. So it may not just be one factory, it could be several. And what they're seeing is that OT network design has grown organically over time, and each factory has evolved a little bit different. So that each factory is unique in terms of its design. In other words, it's like a snowflake. It's kind of a one-of-a-kind design. Additionally, with each unique design in a factory, it means that there is local so-called tribal knowledge that's required in order to understand and explain the as-is OT network. So the challenge here is that with that aging workforce that has that tribal knowledge, well, guess what? They're starting to leave the business. So that knowledge is leaving the building. So the as-is OT networks that IT is learning about doesn't typically follow, best design practices that they're used to. And this means that, in their mind, reliability and security of the OT networks is coming into question. So all of this creates challenges for the IT and the security teams, and those IT and security teams have realized that a new network design needs to be considered and looked at. Now, when you're dealing with a greenfield scenario, a new production line is being set up or something like that, it's much easier to introduce new designs. However, in a brownfield factory scenario, where you're trying to change a design, this will be challenging to migrate to this new design, and it will take time and careful planning to undertake such a migration. It's absolutely possible, and this is actually a great place where ForFusion can help. So if you have a situation like that, please do reach out and engage ForFusion. That's where their expertise really shines. So let's take a peek now at some of the classic challenges found in some of the OT networks. And industrial networks have historically been deployed by OT teams with limited help from IT. The ops team, they know how to build a manufacturing process, and but they don't necessarily have a lot of expertise in cybersecurity or advanced network engineering skills that are actually required today for modern, reliable networks. I guess in parallel to that, in IT and security teams, they generally do not have knowledge of manufacturing processes and what goes on within a manufacturing environment. And they may choose to use certain cybersecurity tools that do not support the industrial protocols that are used in these OT environments. So driving change can be difficult as you have to account for a massive number of OT assets, multiple stakeholders such as vendors and contractors, and operational constraints as well to prevent any types of disruption to production. So the initial engagement with the IT and the OT teams can be a little bit strained, but this situation usually improves quite quickly as the teams get to know one another and they start to understand, who's got what skills and the contribution that they have, that each person has to offer, to kind of jointly work and collaborate towards a better design. And that next challenge that happens is that most manufacturing organizations and the OT networks, they don't have a comprehensive or up-to-date inventory list of all the connected industrial assets that are active on the network. An IT and OT person likely won't know how many devices are on the OT network at any given time, nor will they know how those devices are communicating with each other. They won't know what vulnerabilities those OT assets have, nor will they know what risk they're carrying by allowing these OT assets to operate on the network unrestrained. So because there's this limited visibility of OT assets, there is usually a lack of network segmentation, or if there is some segmentation, it may not be done in the most effective way. So I guess furthermore, some OT devices can be old, as I mentioned before, and since they were designed not necessarily with security in mind, they're relatively simple devices, some of these OT assets, they're particularly vulnerable to malware and malicious traffic. So industrial networks, because they have this kind of flat layer 2 network designs in place, it makes it easy for attackers and malware actually to move laterally. So when malware finds its way into such a flat network, it can quickly spread across the network and cause havoc and cause downtime. So this is, I guess, quite a long list of challenges, but fear not. we have solutions that we'll be discussing coming up, but before we do that, let's have a look at some of the kind of the top challenges as have been reported out to a recent survey that Cisco did with about 1,000 manufacturers around the world, and what some of their main trends are in the space. So obviously manufacturing is encountering issues today around rising energy costs, which are driving inflation. There's a number of kind of macroeconomic issues that are impacting them. They're really outside of their control, to be honest. Other things that are a major challenge at the moment is that, unfortunately, manufacturers have become a huge target for hackers. So the hackers are out there to disrupt. They want to cause problems in manufacturing, or to make a certain company look bad in the press, cause some reputational damage and brand damage. Also want to hurt them financially. So that's kind of their intent. It is malicious for sure. And what we have been hearing from customers is that these cybersecurity risks in the OT space are of great concern. It is a challenge that they want to tackle, and we're seeing some organizations that have identified this to be a key area of investment for them going forward to address the cyber risks that they are facing. So another kind of top challenge there is the shortage of skilled workers. I mean, we mentioned, you know, I don't think you'll find many people in the world that have, you know, all the cybersecurity knowledge, advanced networking skills, and have, you know, industrial automation know-how all in one single person. That's pretty hard to find. I mean, they are out there, but there's a shortage of those types of skills, particularly in one person, if not just even spread out across a variety of people. So what we're seeing there is a trend is that automation is becoming more and more important. And when I say automation, I'm definitely saying that with a Cisco lens on. So that's kind of network and security type automation. So workflows that we can put in place that will automate things and make it a lot easier for OT personnel, for example, to get their jobs done. Then the core business objectives, I guess, if you're kind of looking at the main business objectives for manufacturing, really they've remained constant. I mean, improving quality, reducing costs, increasing efficiency, expanding to new markets, improving profitability. Those things are continuing for sure. Something new that has kind of come in of late is sustainability. There are some specific KPIs now that many manufacturers are working towards around the sustainability side of things. In any case, technology investments are a critical means for achieving improved business objectives, and these technology improvements lead to, you know, increased demands on the production network and the OT network and the security infrastructure. So let's take a look now at connecting and securing the plant and see how we can help you out. So Cisco is helping industries digitize, and our Cisco's industrial networking and security business is really leveraging and bringing the enterprise networking and security into the operational technologies industrial environments, including factories, plants, and warehouses. It's a major focus area actually for Cisco. So Cisco products, they're not only hardened and ruggedized, you know, taking that Cisco IT technology, hardening and ruggedizing it, but it's also incorporating OT type requirements into those products. So, for example, some of our hardware products and our software products, they will support industrial protocols, particularly in cybersecurity area. And we have bespoke tools for OT cybersecurity. So what's great about this, though, is that we've got a long experience in Cisco in managing networks and securing networks on the IT side. So if you've got IT personnel that are helping out the OT side, they're going to be very familiar with the manageability of the tool sets there, because it's something that they've worked with before. So what we're trying to do is to get the best of both IT and OT into one portfolio. So if you look at some of the key IT capabilities that we're talking about here, it's really trying to drive less complexity at large scale. So kind of one network architecture is actually common between IT and OT. Keeping manageability of that network as simple as possible. You know, there is some familiarity on the IT side with the tool called Catalyst Center. Well, now Catalyst Center is also being updated to be more, take on more OT type requirements. So it's more appropriate for that domain. And also we're leveraging some of the industry leading Cisco security architecture, including Cisco trustworthy features, TrustSec, 802.1x, NetFlow, MACsec. These are security features that have been hugely beneficial on the IT side, and we're bringing those now into the OT side, and they're there today. And we've also got consistent commercial models for software and licensing across IT and OT. And then on the OT side, what we're doing there is we're making sure that our products are built for the harsh and environments that they're used in, and for the outdoor environments that they might find themselves in, or unheated or uncarpeted spaces. There's support for industrial automation protocols such as Profinet and Siemens S7 and Modbus TCP and ODVA's Common Industrial Protocol, or SIP as it's also known. We also have resiliency protocols that we're building in that's typically used in industrial environments. So for example, Cisco's own resilient Ethernet protocol, a ring type protocol to help with resiliency, device level ring, which is from Rockwell, and then industry standards like media redundancy protocol, also called MRP, or parallel redundancy protocol, which is PRP, and HSR, or high availability and seamless redundancy. So those are resiliency capabilities that we've built into our industrial products to help our OT customers. We've also got industrial cybersecurity certifications. So Cisco has IEC 62443 4-1 certifications, as well as 4-3 for some of our products. So support for industrial cybersecurity with application and network-based sensors is also something that we're doing as well. I'll speak a little bit more about that in a moment. And next, I also want to kind of touch on something that has helped a lot, whereas we've been working on validated designs, and we're not doing this in an isolation either. We're working with the likes of Rockwell Automation, with Siemens and Schneider Electric and Mitsubishi, and I'll incorporate that into these validated designs. And these validated designs are meant to be an end-to-end reference network blueprint or architectures that are really meant to simplify and greatly lower risk that's involved for deployment of these technologies in an OT space, and so that you can get the most out of industrial automation. And the designs have been thoroughly tested. It's a long list of use cases. The design testing is done, as I mentioned before, with partners and with OT vendors. So it's not a Cisco only thing. And what we really aim to do with this Cisco validated design is to build confidence so that our customers can use and deploy these designs. They're proven. They'll help you deploy faster with more increased predictability and lower your risk. And so what we aim to do is really get customers to have high confidence in the designs. And by the way, as a colleague says, you know, Cisco doesn't offer a lot of things for free, but the one things that we do offer for free is the validated designs, and those can be downloaded at www.cisco.com/go/IoTCVD. So have a look at those. Here's just a snapshot of one example. There's, I think, 3 or 4 validated designs that we've got for what we call industrial automation or manufacturing. And the CVDs are, you know, testing those use cases. They're meant to achieve specific business outcomes. There's a variety of Cisco products, not from all the different portfolios, not that are part of the end-to-end design, but there is an emphasis on the Cisco industrial products for sure. And the labs are built, as I mentioned before, with partner and OT vendor products. So we try to replicate a real-life manufacturing facility. Here's a view of the Cisco's industrial networking portfolio, and it is We're fortunate enough to be in an industry leading position in terms of connectivity and security platforms for manufacturing production environments. Our Ethernet switching, we offer that from an in-machine network connectivity with the IE 3100, which is quite a small switch, meant really to kind of fit right alongside or inside the machines even. And then we've also got other DIN rail mountable devices, as well as even got IP67 rated devices. So if you're in a very high vibration or a very dusty, dirty, and water-soaked area, then we've got switches that can accommodate those kind of environments. All of our switches are iOS XE, and routers are iOS XE based. So Cisco Security, Catalyst Center is supported. We've got some special features in them, like for ease of replacement. We've got special SD flash cards that you can use. It's really easy for, you know, if a switch fails, for example, you pull out the SD card from the old switch, you put it into the new switch, it'll pick up its config and the most recent firmware versions and load that all up on the switch so that you're up and running within a few minutes after a failure. Obviously, as mentioned before, we've got a bunch of resiliency protocols, industrial protocols that are supported. Some models support PoE. We've got conformal coding. Also, some of our equipment supports IOX, which is meant for, it's a hypervisor, can host third-party software applications. And some of our kit is also TrustSec capable. Our industrial wireless access points in the middle there are come in kind of two flavors. One is support kind of just standard Wi-Fi access points, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E. And it also supports wireless backhaul, which is a unique technology that Cisco has, which is particularly useful for nomadic or mobile devices such as AGVs or AMRs. And of course, finally, we've got our bespoke industrial cybersecurity products, which involve cybersecurity visibility and remote access for OT assets. And next, I wanted to just highlight one of our customers, and there's a really interesting video that's online about this. If you search up Cisco and Northvolt, you might get a hit on that if you Google that. But Northvolt is, I would say, a very forward-thinking manufacturer. They're relatively new to the scene. They're an auto battery manufacturer. They're based up in Sweden. Their aim is to be the greenest, most sustainable battery maker in the world, and they're growing incredibly fast. They put on, they're definitely at the forefront of Industry 4.0. They put a strong focus on data-driven manufacturing and data-driven decision-making. And they do that in order to achieve their sustainability and their speed to market objectives. It's been essential for them, really, this data-driven focus. And they standardized on Cisco network architectures all the way into the OEM delivered machines that are on their production lines. So this approach ensured that they had access to the maximum amount of data to improve and optimize their production process and significantly reduce waste and improve product quality. And again, just a shout out for that video. There's people from Northvolt that actually talk about the really impressive waste reduction that they were able to achieve in a very short period of time. And it was all through really this making data available and taking quick decisions on it, making tests on that through digital twins, and then using automation to be able to apply those changes very quickly. So next, let's have a look at gaining visibility into your industrial network. And some, connecting more OT assets and remote users creates a challenge of security. Air gapping alone really no longer works in a world where AI and cloud-based connectivity is necessary for the smart factory. That's just the world that we're heading toward. So industrial systems have really not been built with cybersecurity in mind, as as they have for IT systems. And due to the critical nature of production networks, they require advanced cybersecurity capabilities. So the traditional approach of consisting of deploying dedicated appliances for OT security, threat detection, zone segmentation, and secure remote access is proving to be complex to deploy and certainly costly to scale that up in a way across many factories. So in some cases, it's just not that practical for manufacturers to do that. So as we define the networking standards of the future, Cisco is bringing the latest advances in IT to industrial networking equipment today. And Cisco's market-leading industrial switches and routers embed advanced cybersecurity capabilities that let you gain visibility at scale and implement microsegmentation, if you choose to do so, to build secure industrial networks and to make zero trust network access with specific constraints of industrial protocols. And so that may sound like a bit of a fantasy world, but actually it's not. It's achievable, and we're doing that today. So this next slide here about a secure OT security journey is actually straight out of the Industrial Security CVD. So again, if you go to www.cisco.com/go/IoT-CVD, click on manufacturing, and then you go to industrial security, you will see this material in more detail presented there. But what we're trying to get across is that securing industrial operations is a journey, and customers will need time to bring advanced security capabilities into their industrial networks. And the first step is really building a security foundation. So that box one there, where you secure the operational boundary or the perimeter, there should be a well-defined boundary at the edge of the OT network. And best practices are to implement something like an industrial demilitarized zone, sometimes called an IDMZ, to control communication between OT devices and any external networks. And the main goal here is just to ensure that only traffic that is intended to enter or exit the OT zone is well-defined and intended to leave. The second pillar here is called security posture and zero trust network access. That's what the ZTNA means of OT assets. And this is where we start focusing on security more in depth. And when I say in depth, it's in the depth of the OT network. This requires visibility into the OT security and the posturing and monitoring of events in an OT network. And Cisco offers a tool called CyberVision, which is actually built into the Cisco network devices, and it provides this visibility at scale. To remotely configure and to maintain and to, backing up there a little bit. So industrial customers widely rely on remote access for vendors and contractors, and those experts need to be able to securely and remotely configure, maintain, troubleshoot OT assets. And so Cisco has a relatively new solution called Secure Equipment Access that is specifically designed to bring the benefits of a ZTNA architecture to OT workflows. And Adam's going to be talking about this in a little bit later. But the visibility gained with CyberVision, that can be used really in pillar number 3 here, can be used to segment the network into smaller zones of trust. That's really following the methodology of the IEC 62443. So we build up your zones and your conduits. And to help with that segmentation, we're taking the data that CyberVision discovers on the network about the OT assets, and that is integrated over into Cisco's Identity Services Engine, which you can then leverage to provide profiling and create security policies that can be enforced in the network. So the industrial asset profiles collected by CyberVision can help to build these dynamic security groups. So Cisco TrustSec is used to enforce these groups, and that's done by configuring and through the pushing of those policies by ICE into the network. Then you'll get that type of strong enforcement happening. So using the switches as enforcement points reduces the need for dedicated security appliances, and it also enables more flexibility in positioning of security policy enforcements in your network. And then lastly, it's that last pillar, the number 4, develop an incident and investigation and response. It's all about when your security tools detect abnormal activity, it's important to have a complete picture of what's happened, and rather than focus on a single isolated event. So Cisco CyberVision, it integrates with tools like Cisco's SOAR product called XDR, and that gives OT context to incident investigations. In fact, there's a little ribbon in CyberVision that integrates directly with XDR, where you can promote certain events or suspect activities directly into XDR for threat investigation. So CyberVision has also recently released an application or an app for Cisco Splunk, which is available now in the app sections of Splunk, and that's available both in the Enterprise Base Edition of Splunk as well as the Splunk Enterprise Security, which is the SIEM product. So operational networks, they require advanced cybersecurity capabilities, if we're honest with ourselves, and the traditional approach consisting of deploying dedicated appliances for OT visibility and threat detection and zone segmentation and secure remote access is certainly complex to deploy. As we define the network standards of the future, we're looking to embed advanced cybersecurity capabilities in our industrial switches and routers. And the way that we're going about that is really with software. So the idea is our network as a fabric to secure the OT networks. And so you've got the underlay of the Cisco hardware that's in place, and we layer on the security software as virtual and overlay. That's really a great way to be able to scale up networks, and because you can do that and do this from a central point. So how the types of software that we're applying there is the CyberVision sensors, so the OT visibility, as well as the Zero Trust Network remote access, so the secure equipment access agents, and then the policy enforcement. So when you're working with the industrial cybersecurity project or thinking of expanding or refreshing your industrial network, think about it and maybe do yourself a favor. Avoid sourcing and installing and managing additional appliances that are very specific to solve a particular cybersecurity feature. Maybe look at things in terms of evaluating OT security in terms of a wider solutions, and just be aware of their architectural implications. So embedding some security capabilities into industrial network equipment might be a really good option for you. Certainly would simplify deployment, makes it a lot more scalable, and enables you to see a lot more. So this will not only have a positive impact on your sustainability objectives, but should reduce the effort of having to support many point solutions going forward. Okay, so next I wanted to take a look at the heart of Cisco's OT cybersecurity solution, and that's really CyberVision. It is specifically designed to ensure full visibility into industrial networks, providing precise information into connected industrial assets, their security posture and how they're communicating, and the patterns that they're communicating and getting a good understanding as well as what's being done on the industrial protocols, what commands are flying back and forth. So CyberVision gains visibility directly from the network infrastructure, and in a brownfield deployment where you may not have Cisco devices there, we also have a device where you can concentrate and span locally into to the CyberVision sensors, and that's a nice way to be able to do that at lower cost. So the CyberVision Center is kind of the top of the hierarchy, and the CyberVision sensors, then they function on each of the different types of network devices. They do the deep packet inspection, and they're doing that by default passively. And that's what builds up a picture of assets and what's on the network and profiles them. So it also sees how those network devices are communicating with each other, and it will be able to identify in those assets, the vendor, the type of product that it is, and the firmware that it's running. And when it has that type of information, it's able to throw up the asset vulnerabilities that are known for that particular device. Cybervision also applies a risk score. So when you have a device it's in a high risk category because of the vulnerabilities that it's got, then that's kind of an indicator that that's a particular device that you may want to pay a little bit more attention to and to patch sooner rather than later. So Cybervision is kind of like a flight recorder in an industrial network, and it collects a huge amount of information on the OT network. And what's helpful is each of the specific users of Cybervision can create different views of the data and kind of save off different filters and create what's called a preset. And they can baseline that preset. So should anything change within that view of the network substantially, so for example, if a PLC, which is only meant to communicate within zone 1, is suddenly starting to communicate with zone 2, or it's trying to reach out to the internet, that would be an abnormality that would be flagged, and an event would be caused and sent out and communicated out the way. It is also possible to have intrusion detection. Not all of the Cisco equipment has the horsepower in it to be able to do intrusion detection on it, as well as being a switch or a router. The Cybervision Center can also be a source for the intrusion detection, but all of these are certainly possible. So good. Cybervision, I suppose, lastly, is to say that typically the Cybervision Center is a virtual machine that's meant to run in like an OT data center or in the OT environment, but we also have private cloud options. So if you wanted to run it in your own private AWS or your private Azure setup, you can do that. It's available in the marketplace. So next, just quickly wanted to touch on a couple of examples of customers here. The E80 group is a manufacturer of AGVs, and they're today using and building in our Catalyst IE3400 switches into their AGVs, and they're running Cisco Cybervision on them to help them get visibility to communications and the security risk that is posed to the AGVs. So they continuously monitor the cybersecurity stance of their machines. And then next, we've also got another major manufacturer. We're not allowed to say the name, but you might be able to guess who it is. But we've got a major automotive manufacturer that has standardized on using, again, Cisco's IE3400s for its TrustSec capabilities as a part of their industrial network infrastructure. They're using these on all their production lines and on their paint lines. And these IE switches are now a part of their business as usual, or BAU design, for which is the standard for all the factories to which they are building at the moment. And with that, Adam, I'm going to hand things over to you.
All right, thanks, Greg.
You bet. And I've just made you presenter.
There we go. I got that. Thank you. So I think Greg's done a really good job there of setting the scene. We're talking about what we're going on, what we're seeing, the trends we've seen, and I think let's talk now about how we manage the remote access for maintenance into these environments. So remote access, it's key for this to be able to configure, manage, and troubleshoot these OT assets without, hopefully, time-consuming and costly site visits. I think we've probably all been in the situation where we need something done, and we need to wait for a visit. We need to have this planned. The delay can add up, the cost can add up, and it is an inconvenience sometimes to have this done. So this introduces delay. It can introduce delay into your manufacturing. It can introduce delay into new products and projects. So we need to find a better way of doing this. So it's a daunting task to enable this at scale. You might have highly distributed sites. Assets are often sat behind NAT, network address translation boundaries. It's not an easy thing. So we might have to look at configuring firewall rules, deploying dedicated gateway hardware, and this puts an extra burden on both the IT and the OT teams. It's not an ideal situation. So what we've got here is Cisco Secure Access. So Cisco's helping to solve the challenges that I've just talked about with SEA. And so this combines, I mean, Greg talked about Zero Trust Network Access or ZTNA. So it combines the benefits of a ZTNA solution with a network architecture that makes it easy and simple to deploy this in an OT specific environment. There's no dedicated hardware to install. There's no dedicated hardware to manage. There's no complex firewall rules to configure and maintain. So what we do instead with SEA is the industrial switches themselves, or the routers that connect the OT assets, they enable the remote access to them. So we can come into this environment without having to do all those complex things. We don't have to wait for the customer visit. We don't have to plan this, and the costs don't start adding up. As well as that, it features comprehensive security capabilities. So we've got easy to build policies. We can base these on identities. We can base it on context. We can do things and base it on time and what's permissible at that time. Is this allowed now? Who can come in? And you can see this, you can monitor it, so you've got visibility of that. So it helps to ensure that the employees, vendors, contractors, they can only access the specific device you choose. So we can really help to tie that down. It's not a network level access. This is a ZTNA model. It's a device level access. So you don't get access to subnet A or subnet B. You get access to only what you need. So we can specify what protocols they can access this on and the day and the time of the day that this can happen. So we can enforce things. We can look at posture. We can look at multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, and it just helps centralize this configuration. So we can configure this within the dashboard. We can allow this access on our terms and our criteria, but it removes that requirement for these site visits as well. So what that does help do really at the end of the day is it helps avoid delays, and it helps keep the product and the production line up. So we have a customer here. So this is an automotive parts manufacturer. So they've chosen to deploy this. So this is a good one to talk through. So they've decided to deploy SEA. Specifically here, we're looking at provide the remote access to the machines and their key assets, the key assets for their business. So they've deployed Cisco IE 3300 switches at the top of their production line. So this is where the SEA agent will run. So it runs on the device in a container. So Greg talked about IOX earlier. This is how we run this. And then it's able to reach all of the equipment and the OT assets below this where it sits on the network. So the feedback we got from the customer was that they really appreciated the ability to virtually look over the shoulder of a remote user. So they can see what's going on. They can see what the session's doing. They can see everything that user is doing. They could also record that session, which is something they're looking at taking advantage of. And importantly, they can terminate that session. So if something is not right, if something is going on, you can, much like revoking a physical badge, you can terminate that session immediately. So if we talk about segmenting the network, which is something Greg touched upon earlier again. So many of these networks have grown over the years and they have become large, flat, layer 2 networks. We've seen different teams. You have your OT team, you have your IT team, and they are totally separate. They have got separate goals. They've got separate objectives to meet in creating an effective network. So what we are seeing though is it really is becoming critical to segment the industrial network. We've seen a lot of drive to segment the IT network. There's a lot of things here where we're looking at micro-segmentation. We're looking at zero trust network, zero trust application access. So we need to extend that into the OT space because these are critical assets, and what we can use is we can use much of the same tooling so that we don't have a disparity in what we see in the IT space with the OT space. So it is becoming critical, and it is something that we've seen more and more customers looking at and really driving towards. So Greg talked about cyber-vision earlier. So Cisco cyber-vision, what we can do with that is we can group OT assets. We can discover these passively, we can discover them actively, but we can start to gather attributes or data about these assets. What we can do with that is provide that to other tool sets that we might have. So if we deploy an asset and we learn about that, we can send attributes of that asset over to something like the Cisco Secure Firewall Management Center or FMC via something that's called the Secure Dynamic Attributes Connector. So that's CSDAC. There's a lot of acronyms today. So we can use that dynamic object then. So if it changes in the network, it will change on the firewall. So we don't have to necessarily go in and create, this asset A can access asset B based on a something like an IP address. It's agnostic to that. We can create this based on attributes that can be updated. So any change made in cyber-vision is automatically updated on the FMC. So it removes that, the tedious updates that you might have to do. So cyber-vision gives you the full visibility into the industrial network. It allows you to look at your OT security posture, and it helps reduce the attack surface. So we talked about the micro-segmentation, but this is really key in that. You can't protect what you can't see. So this helps us to see that piece there. So as well as the visibility, and then we can share this with the firewall manager. We can do this with ICE as well. So we've got a lot of customers that have got ICE deployed in their IT space. We're using this for .1x for a wireless connection or a wired connection. We're using map and profiling, we're using all these clever things with posture and everything. But what we can also do is we can share this context across from the industrial network. So cyber-vision can also share the profiles of the assets, the data, the attributes of those that it belongs to. So we can create profiles on ICE, and we could say, well, you're a device that lives in cell 1, and you're a device that lives in cell 2, for example. So we could start to build a picture in ICE as well of where these devices sit. So what we can then do here, and you can see it on the slide there just below where it says Cisco Identity Services Engine, we can look at building a policy matrix with TrustSec security group tags to restrict the access between, so you may everything in cell 1 may be able to talk to everything else in cell 1, but everything in cell 1 you might not want to talk to cell 2. So we can use micro-segmentation, we can use TrustSec, we can use tags to start to protect that. And it's a simple matrix view of this can talk to this and this can't talk to this. You don't need to add firewalls in, and now you're looking at protecting that east-west traffic rather than just the traffic in and out of the OT environment itself. There's no looping of traffic up to a firewall and back down. It keeps it there. The switches themselves become the enforcement points in the network. So really important, and we're seeing more of a drive towards it. So I think what's worth bearing in mind here is we've talked about this integration with the FMC. We've talked about this, cyber-vision. We've got the FMC. We've got ICE. We can micro-segment. So Cisco is the only vendor in the market that has this fully automated, all the way down to the switches. We've got the remote access we can also deploy there as well. So we get a lot of data from this. So it's what do we do with the data? I've seen it before where you'll get the data and you do nothing with the data, and then the data doesn't become useful until you've got something that you can look at. So this is where cyber-vision can also help as well. So we can extend, your IT, your enterprise SOC, Security Operations Center, into the OT domain. So you could start to unify that piece there with the OT domain, the IT domain, and they can then cross-connect. The threat in the OT domain might come into the IT domain and vice versa. So, security information and event management platforms or SIEMs can be they're the security control tower. cyber-vision can feed into those, so we can start to get alerts. So there is, Cisco now famously have purchased Splunk. With the acquisition of Splunk, we can feed the cyber-vision into this. There is an application we can look at, and we can start to really drive down into the detail of what we see. So it gives us that unified view. You can detect threats or attacks in both the IT and the OT environment. You don't have separate tool sets, you don't have separate licenses, you don't have separate applications and maintenance on those. So it is also, cyber-vision is also interoperable with other SIEM platforms such as QRadar. We've got NetWitness and others as well. So what we also have here is XDR. I know Greg talked about XDR a little bit earlier. So we can combine XDR and Splunk. So this now starts to offer, you know, you've got that login piece, you've got that, we've got the information, but what do we do? How do we respond to it? So we don't necessarily just need to prevent attacks or detect attacks. We need to prevent, detect, and react to the attacks as well. And that's where the integration with XDR gives us that. So Splunk will help us, you know, we can get that data, we can put it all in one place. XDR, we can start to really use that. Okay, what's happening? What can we do? And then we can react to that. So it's a buzzword, but it is powerful in this instance. It allows us to build an AI-powered cross-domain security platform. So where is this data? What is it? Let's look at it. Do we see any patterns in there? And we can leverage the AI, we can leverage the machine learning to look into these pieces as well. So with that, I will move on to just talk about, you know, who we are, what we can do for you. So there's a lot of information on this slide about 4Fusion. So we provide a lot of different services to a lot of different customers. We're trusted by Cisco. We're a Cisco Gold partner. We've got various different Cisco accreditations, which were mentioned at the top of the presentation. So we're trusted by Cisco. We're trusted by central government. We do a large amount of work for the authorities there and our private sector customers. So we've got more Cisco accreditations and CCIEs than any other provider in the north of England. And we do cover all technology areas. So we've talked a lot today about OT and security and things, but there's loads of other things. And, you know, we've got our networking, we've got our data center, we've got our wireless, we can cover all of that as well. We also like to innovate in a way that has allowed us to displace cumbersome and slow moving global suppliers. So, you know, we've seen a number of projects over the years where this isn't happening, or it's moving too slowly, or the team's too big, they're not responsive. We like to be fast, we like to be agile, and we like to try and move these things along in a way that makes sense to the customer. I did mention earlier about ADIO, the Assess, Design, Integrate, and Operate methodology. So that's something we developed, that's something we stick to, and it works really well. So we have a clear plan on how we can deliver projects. What can we do for you? So we can help you with any and all aspects of your OT and IT networks. We're looking at leveraging the powerful Cisco portfolio that we've talked about in this presentation to help you drive your digital transformation. Whatever project you have going, we can look at that with you. So with that, Greg, I'll hand over to you here.
Okay, thanks very much. We're nearly completed the hour. We're at the Q&A section right now, everyone. So I have a quick look in the Q&A panel. I don't see anything there. Perhaps we could open up the floor. Does anyone have any questions? Add it into chat, Q&A, or we can have you come off mute. So I'm not seeing anything come through on the chat in Q&A, and we are now at the top of the hour. So I think, Adam, maybe we should wrap.
Sure. Yeah, if you could just move us on to the very last slide then, Greg, that'd be wonderful. And I can just quickly finish us up here. So firstly, I would like to say, and I'm sure Greg would as well, that thank you for all listening today. I realize it's an hour out of your day, so we do really appreciate it. Next steps here, if you want to learn more about the Cisco industrial networking portfolio, see how something like secure equipment access or cyber vision can help you, talk to us. We can look at providing a no obligation. We can do a demo. We can come and speak to you and see what you need. All the information there is at 4fusion.com. And thank you again for listening today.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.